Welcome to Reports from Arbroath. This episode is brought to you by Woakes. Learn more at warwickspice.co.uk.
Hello and welcome to Reports from Arbroath. Today I am delighted to be joined by Chris Woakes, Warwickshire and England all-rounder. Chris has travelled far since learning his trade as a cricketer in club cricket at Aston Manor and Warmley, then in the youth system at Edgbaston under Steve Perryman and others. Chris made his first-class debut at 18, Scott Newman, his first wicket, then bowled Warwickshire to Championship promotion the following season, and he was on his way. That journey has so far brought 59 Test matches, World Cup winners' medals in T20 and 50 over, and over 4,500 runs and nearly 400 wickets for England across the formats. Chris has travelled far, yet in one way, not far at all. Still a proud Brummie, he remains as connected to his roots as ever. Chris, welcome to Reports from Arbroath. Professional sport can be a brutal business. To get to the top and stay there is a tough road. You've done okay.
Yeah, it's not been too bad. Not been too bad, Bri. I think if someone would have offered me the career that I've had right now, I'd have obviously snatched their hands off. I would never have thought it was possible, to be honest with you. As you mentioned there, some nice numbers and some numbers which I never thought would have been possible. So feel really pleased, privileged, honoured and lucky. But then also, as you touched on, a lot of hard work's gone into it, dedication, sacrifice, and sometimes you don't always get out of things what you put in. But I feel like I've put in a good amount of hard work and other things to go with it, and I've got a half decent reward.
You mentioned a lot of hard work has gone into it, Chris, and that starts at a very early age, doesn't it? I mean, how soon do you start setting targets and looking, maybe I can get to the next step here?
Yeah, very early days, I think, I was just playing still purely for the love of it. And, the reason I got into cricket was because my brothers played, my dad played a little bit way back when, and he had a bit of a love for the sport and kind of put a bat and a ball in my hand. And then by the time you get to 11, 12, and I had trials for Warwickshire, and I think I missed out the first year and then got in around about 12 years of age, but was still kind of, although you've got to be half decent to be able to play for the county at 12 or whatever it is, but I was still playing it because I enjoyed the sport, enjoyed being outside in the summer, playing with friends, playing with people, socialising, and that was the reason why I kind of still loved the game and got into the game. And then it wasn't until you get a bit older and maybe 13, 14, get offered onto the academy at Warwickshire, and you're like, well, hang on a minute, I must be good for them to kind of put me into a select group on the academy. So it's probably at that point I was like, well, this is getting a bit more serious. And it wasn't really until probably 15, 16, and I was like, well, maybe becoming professional in a few years time actually is a possibility. And then it becomes a bit more serious then. So I try not, ever since that moment where I was like, right, I want to do it, I want to become a professional cricketer, and that happened, it was kind of like small increments for me. I never was like, before I'd even become a professional cricketer, I wasn't like, I want to play for England. It was kind of like, the dream was to play at Edgbaston. The dream then was to play for the first team at Edgbaston. You then do that, and then you kind of like, well, all right, can I cement a spot in the team? It was always kind of like small increments. It was never like thinking, at the peak of Everest. It was always thinking about little small steps along the way, and it is exactly how I still see my career now. I try not to look too far ahead, and it's not easy to do. So sometimes you get carried away and you probably get ahead of yourself sometimes, but the game is very good at kind of keeping your level, I think, sometimes, especially in professional sport. You can easily get knocked down a peg or two quite quickly, and setbacks can be good for you as well, can't they? So I think that's always the mantra I've had, is kind of not look too far ahead, and small increments, whatever it is you're looking to do.
I guess that's the way to go about it, because without the small steps at the start, the big step's not going to happen, is it?
No, absolutely not. And there's always going to be things that don't go to plan, is there? If you start looking at, you want to play for England by the time you're 21, say, for instance, just as a random one, and then you might get an injury and you're out of the game for 6 months, and all of a sudden you're back down the pecking order. Form comes and goes in professional sport, and I think that's one thing which I've learned across my career is when you are hot and you're running well, you need to make the most of it. They're the moments where you need to bottle it up, use it as much as possible, make sure you prolong that sort of stretch of form for as long as you can, because there's absolutely no doubt even the best have had bad runs of form, and that's always not too far around the corner. So as I said, the sport keeps you grounded and keeps you sort of level at all times.
And I guess it's very important at all stages of your career to have the right people around you as well. A lot of it's got to come from you, but also I guess you need mentors and people giving you good advice. And everybody has got an opinion, haven't they? I guess you need to ascertain which ones are the ones you need.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you're right. Having good people around you is important as a sports person. You need to have the right people kind of guiding you in the right direction. Telling whether you're getting too big for your boots, or whether you're not being confident enough, whatever it is, but someone there to just have a good sounding board. My dad was always good for that as a youngster. He was always he was never a pushy parent. He would always let me kind of figure things out for myself. Always step in occasionally if I needed to be told, but almost just let me figure it out for myself a little bit, which I look back on now and extremely grateful for. But yeah, as you said, everyone has an opinion especially in the modern world. There's a lot of opinions out there, and I think I said to you before, some of them are good, some of them are absolutely shocking. And you learn what to take on board and what not to, and that's something which you have to learn to deal with as a professional sportsman or sports person, is that sometimes you're going to hear things that you don't really want to hear. Sometimes you're going to hear things that you don't think are true, but probably actually are. And it's just kind of being able to deal with that as you go along and soaking it up. And part of that actually sometimes is going out there and trying to prove people wrong. That can spur you on as well.
I guess that level of attention and opinion giving escalates obviously when you get into the England setup, doesn't it? And there were times, especially early in your international career, when people weren't sure and we need more pace. And how much does that affect you? Is it a spur, or do you think, well, I'm doing my best here?
Yeah, I think a bit of both, bro. I think it is a little bit of, those moments can be a bit of sink or swim, really. I remember making my England debuts in Australia, and I had some relatively good success. I mean, some very good success actually early on in my second game, taking 6 for. But even, I don't know if this is my character or not, but I still knew I wasn't anywhere near a finished article and wasn't actually probably quite anywhere near good enough to hold down a spot in the team. I needed to put on pace. And there was a couple of games not too far after I took that 6 for, and I remember bowling at the MCG, and Shane Watson hit me over my head like 2 or 3 times in and over. And I just remember at that point thinking, I can't, this is, what I've got is obviously okay, I'm doing all right, but it's not good enough to stay here and keep going and get better and have a long career at international level. And it was a bit of an eye-opener that tour, because although I did have some success, which showed I had some talent, but I had to get better, I had to get quicker, I had to get stronger. And I suppose in a way, there's 2 sort of characters which can, you can shy away from it, or you can kind of, I was really keen to get better, get stronger, get quicker, and make sure that I wanted to play for England for a longer period of time, not just come on, have a couple of games, have a debut, and then that was it. I wanted to get better, I wanted to stay there. And and I'm grateful for myself for having that feeling and wanting to do that, because at that point it'd be easier to have gone, well, I've played international cricket, I can go back to Warwickshire and have a good career, but I was desperate to do more, if that makes sense.
In professional cricket, like probably any occupation, whatever talent you've got, it's got to be underpinned on graft, isn't it? And you don't get to the top without a lot of unseen hard yards.
Yeah, I look back, Brian, there's a lot of sacrifice, especially through those early years. You got friends that are out on the booze on a Friday and Saturday night, and I still had my fair share of good fun, absolutely, but missed out on a lot of occasions. But I suppose you don't reap the rewards without some form of sacrifice, and that was in the grand scheme of things, a small sacrifice to make, really. But at the same time, I had a hell of a lot of good fun with cricket as well, travelling the world, seeing places which I'd have never seen. Travelling with a group of mates, playing cricket for a living, earning good money was something which at one point was just a dream. So to be able to live that and work through that was amazing. But you're right, a lot of hard work, a lot of graft, a lot of sort of. I do think that a lot of the times when people talk about sports people and kind of, there's a lot, especially in nowadays, they're like, oh well, they earn this amount of money and they should be doing this and they should be doing that, and when you're in the public eye a lot, and cricketers aren't in comparison to footballers, but there is a lot of sacrifice that goes into it. There's a lot of scrutiny. There's a lot of pressures which people don't see, and a lot of the time the pressure comes from the player themselves. I'm my biggest critic. I don't need to look in a paper or look online to see that I've had a bad day. I know myself. I'm the first person. I know whether I could bowl a spell and people think, oh, look at the figures and go, oh, he's bowled well there. And I know myself, I actually bowled pretty badly. So I'm the biggest critic, and that's the way I've always been. I know if I've had a good day or a bad day. I know when I'm not quite at it. There's I'm sure there's a lot of sports people that are in the same boat. But as you say, a lot of graft, a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice. Family, been away from family. I've kind of realised that, especially as I've got older through my career. Having two young girls, a wife that spends a lot of time when we're not together, and grateful for all of that, for sticking by me, supporting me, and allowing me to fulfil my dream by playing out a career of a professional sportsman. But I wouldn't change any of it. It's been amazing.
You mentioned you've had a lot of good times with teammates and mates around the world in the England setup, but you are, as I mentioned at the top of this interview, still very connected to your roots, and you did of course take the non-private school route into cricket, which was very rare. It's less rare now these days, but I think that's possibly why quite a lot of your mates are one of the reasons why they're so proud of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been local as well, which obviously I think helps, doesn't it? Playing for Warwickshire, which is my local county, local team. I still live in the area, or near enough the area where I grew up. I've still got mates from school who I see regularly. It's kind of, I've grown up around people that I grew up with as a young lad, and I think that's helped me kind of stay sort of humble and stay the person who I've always wanted to be. I've always tried to not change at all. Obviously, with regards to your success or not, I've always. I meet up with the same group of mates from school who will give me the exact same grief that they gave me when I was 12, 13, 14 years of age. So nothing's changed from that perspective. But I love the fact that I've been at Warwickshire my whole career, ever since I stepped foot in those gates. I'm obviously still there now. I'd like that to stay the same way. I'd like to stay there for the rest of my career. And I don't really see myself moving away from the area. Birmingham, it's very much been part of my life, and I hope it's part of my life for the foreseeable. But the private school and the public school the state school route is, like you say, maybe a little bit different nowadays. You feel like there's a bit more state school opportunities going on, and you see cricket played a little bit more, and that's changed a little bit throughout the years. But I certainly remember back in when I started, at 11, 12, coming into Warwickshire, I was very much one of very few state school kids, and my route into cricket and into professional cricket was more through club cricket. I had two very good clubs in Aston Manor and Warmley, a lot of people to thank for that. But also, as you said, wasn't really. I think I played one or two games of cricket at school throughout my career. A lot of thanks for me will go to the club cricket system and that sort of grassroots system rather than the schooling, obviously.
Among the challenges as you're coming through, as you've said, there's ups and downs, and there must be times both for Warwickshire as a young player and for England when you're just nearly making the breakthrough. Maybe you're 12th man carrying the drinks and you're just thinking, am I going to break through?
They are tough sort of periods, I think, in your career where you kind of, like you say, maybe a fringe player, or you're just you're not quite getting the final nod to be in the 11. And I've always thought, especially now as a 36-year-old, looking back at those moments, and if I could give myself any sort of advice in those moments was always kind of, you know, train and practice like you've got a point to prove. I always remember being in, you know, as an older player in the 11, and you kind of get someone, you know, you watch training or something, or you're training against a guy that's vying for your spot, or a young bowler comes in and you think he's steaming in the nets and he's bowling fast and he's, you know, showing some intent and really like trying to prove a point. And you think as a player in the team at that point, you're like, wow, this kid means business. And I think if I could put myself back in those shoes, and I'd like to think I did this to a certain extent, but is really give it my all in training, even more so than you would normally, because, you know, it's very easy for the players in the team to become complacent. There's anything worse than the guy on the side, on the fringe, showing you how it's meant to be done in training and really giving you sort of a run for your money. And I think that's the kind of advice I would give to any youngster if there are on the fringe, is to, you know, really take their training seriously, look for ways to improve the game, whether it be a percent here, a percent there. And, you know, there's always going to be the case where you are going to get an opportunity at some point, and of course putting yourself under too much pressure to take that with both hands. Obviously, it's at that moment when you get the opportunity to try and stay relaxed, stay in the moment and focus on the process, which is easier said than done, but that is the best way to move forward. But I think when you're on the fringe, the only way, I look back and, you know, there are some frustrating times when I felt like I was training well, I was doing everything I could, and I was still carrying the drinks. But I think those moments kind of just give you more hunger to when you do get that opportunity to take it with both hands.
That's a really interesting point, actually, because at county and international cricket, I guess you are with mates, so you want them to do well, don't you?
Yeah.
But if they do well, it makes your life more difficult, doesn't it? So there's real competition there, isn't there?
Yeah, and that's the real world at the end of the day. You know, in professional sport, is you're constantly vying for each other's places, and, you know, that's just something that you have to get your head round. You know, you might be knocking a mate out of the team, or, you know, one of your good mates are keeping you out of the team. But, you know, I think that's you know, you have to have that competitive side to you where you want to be the one, you know, with the ball in hand, taking the wickets, bowling the overs, scoring the runs, you know, your name on the shirt, you know, scoring the runs for England or Warwickshire or whatever the team is. You want to be that person that's putting the hand up for the team. And I think, you know, that the bigger picture is, at the end of the day, is trying to win games of cricket. That's the way I've always tried to see it. And you just want to be a part of that, you know, contributing, taking wickets, scoring runs. And, you know, part of the process is to sometimes that you have to be on the fringe to kind of realise and what you've got when you get it. You don't want to let go of it.
Just turning to the future, still hopefully plenty of wickets ahead. Ashes next winter, you're available?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. At the minute I am, Brian. I'd like to think I can get there. Obviously there's a lot dependent on selection. You know, I mean, even this summer there's still a lot dependent on selection, but, you know, I know what I'm capable of. I've still got the hunger, I've still got the desire to play for England and Warwickshire moving forward. You know, the body isn't probably as young as it once was, but at the same time, as I said, that desire is still there, and I still feel like I'm bowling well, I still feel fit. And, you know, it does feel a little bit different maybe to the olden days in terms of guys. You know, we do look after ourselves a lot more than what we used to, and you got more things available to us to keep ourselves in that sort of better shape. So I'd like to think I've still got plenty of wickets and overs and runs hopefully in the tank, but I think, as we've spoke on this podcast, is that I never like to look too far ahead. You know, the Ashes, although it's, you know, this year and in November, you know, there's a hell of a lot of cricket to be played before that. I've got to, you know, still produce the goods for Warwickshire to be able to be picked for England. It would be nice to be a part of that this summer, and then what will be, but certainly be keeping myself in the shape to hopefully be selected.
I know you don't like to look too far ahead, but Billy Quaife did play for Warwickshire until he was 56.
Yeah.
So you've got 20 years to go yet.
Yeah, absolutely. 20 years' time. God, I wonder what I'll be doing then. It certainly won't be bowling, that is for sure, Brian. I can't see myself going that far, but we'll see. There's no end in sight just yet, but we shall see.
Well, if you are still around then, mate, I'll get the Zimmer frame out and hopefully coming into
the keeper might be up by that point, Brian. I think the keeper might have to be stood up.
Chris, great to talk. Many thanks for your time.
Cheers, Brian. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, mate.
Reports from Arbroath is an Orion Creative Services production. To listen to more episodes, to read our blog, or to join our mailing list, please visit reportsfromarbroath.com.